It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, July 2nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that thinks there was a lot more going on Monday than maybe the Flyers would have suggested.
Yeah, it's getting a little interesting.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here finally with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, good to have you back in the chair. Thanks again to Haley Simon for hitting yesterday and getting us a good recap of the draft. Speaking of which, there is the weekly poll about the draft already up on YouTube, as well as a link in the show notes for that. Let us know how you think the Flyers did. In the meantime, free agent day, a lot busier for the Flyers than we would have expected. I think there was only one move that we thought that they would be making on Monday, and that's re-signing Erik Johnson, because they pretty much said as much, but there was more.
Yeah, they gave Garnet Hathaway 2 more years so they can keep the AAV down. It's a little puzzling, honestly. It's nice to have some guys show the guys the way, but then at some point, like, you don't need those guys anymore. You need guys who could, put the puck in the net, can score on the power play, do those kinds of things. And, so as an example, if you add up Erik Johnson, Garnet Hathaway, and Nick Delorier, that's a good player.
Right.
And then you could have other young players play, but that's a good player who maybe could play with Michkov. But now they've spent their money another way. So they want to continue to be hard to play against. That's okay. And that's a strategy, but I don't think they're going about it the best way.
Yeah, I'm not sure the timing was right on the Hathaway extension, and that was the reasoning they gave as far as the timing of it was they want to keep the AAV down and basically the same as it will be for this year with a very, very minor increase.
Right.
Apparently, Briere has no concerns on his age for this 2-year deal, which I think, yes and no on that. But yeah, I just think there's no reason to do this now. And I think that they could have waited even until January or February to do it and see how the first half of this season goes to see what kind of part you want a guy like Hathaway to have on the team.
See if he has the same stuff he did last year. Again, I think it's a little misguided to think that, well, Hathaway could play up in the lineup and play on the third line. Not on a really good team, he can't. So you're now limiting yourself if you're going to use Garnet Hathaway on the third line.
Yeah, I think so. And as far as, Erik Johnson, this was just kind of a given that they want a veteran defenseman, the Mark Stahl role.
He sounds like he's a coach. Hire him as a coach. He doesn't need to be on the ice. Everything that everything Danny said, he could do from the locker room.
Yeah, it's fine if that's the kind of guy they want to have to sit, but it better mean that the other guys play.
But we know the answer to that. Ronnie Adler's not going to start with the Flyers this year. He's not. Everybody knows it. He's 25 years old. He's ripe for the job, and he's going to have to wait, or he's never going to get the job. That's the way it's headed right now.
Yeah, I think so. But we've, of course, buried the lead here with Matvei Michkov. I think we were mostly expecting this to happen maybe a couple days from now, later in the week, maybe as part of the dev camp celebration kind of stuff with the fans there and everything. But they got it done. So let's talk about it. Of course, like he got the max out in terms of the cap hit for the next 3 years at 950. He got the full signing bonus in there, but 3.5 million in performance bonuses, which is almost as high as you can get for an ELC.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what it takes to get a great player like that, but
Yeah.
they're in bad cap shape. And if he gets that $3.5 million bonus, I'm pretty sure it rolls over to next year. So, and it just, compounds the problem that Danny talked about. He knows he's in cap trouble here. And so it's a good and a bad thing. You still want him here. You can't do much about that, but it just shows you that he came over quicker than they had a cap solution for. You know what I mean? That's the issue.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like perfectly happy with it. I honestly don't care that they did it. I think you do whatever it takes to get
Right.
him over
I
here,
agree.
and that's fine. The problem I have is that that's the kind of thing you do for Matvei Michkov. I don't understand why then you commit to additional cap space for Garnet Hathaway when you know, like now, when you know there's the potential for these performance bonuses. Now, if one of the performance bonuses is like $500,000 if the Flyers get to the second round of the playoffs, I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's certain degrees of risk that we don't know what those performance
Correct.
bonuses are, and maybe they're less concerned. But from an outside perspective, I think that that's where you got to pump the brakes a little bit on other deals until you know what the roster is going to look like this fall.
Right. And teams, I mean, let's be honest here. Danny didn't want to say it. Teams don't want to talk about taking bad players or taking bad contracts. They're not talking about that right now. That's not what they want to do right now. That's the big thing. And that's
Yeah,
why he's
but
having trouble.
very excited to have Michkov here
Yep.
for sure. The ink is now dry. Michkov has posted to social media, so I am pumped about that aspect of
That's
it.
good.
We'll see if Brier's cap gambling pays off in the long run. As far as other things he talked about, um, no trades on the table right now. He's in discussions as always, but he recognizes that things shut down over the summer. So if nothing happens in the next week or so, wouldn't expect anything to happen at that point.
Right. I mean, so there's two things to talk about there. He's trying to get cap relief. Those are the only trades he's willing to make right now, and I get it. And so far, it's not happening. And then they acquired all these picks. If people think that they're going to make trades from these picks, where's the money coming from? Because you're going to get a player that's going to be a pretty well-sized salary for that kind of deal. Where are they going to be able to fit that in?
Yeah, and certainly Nashville is not going to be a good trade source for the next little
No.
bit because they locked
They
up a
spent
whole
all the
bunch,
money.
all the money. I mean, rightfully so, good for them. But
Yeah.
Nashville has been a common trading partner for the Flyers, and I don't think that's going to be the case for the next little bit, at least. And we know Utah is in a whole different stratosphere than Arizona was as far as spending. So
Yep.
that is also maybe something that's going away that had been kind of in the Flyers' back pocket as well. The other thing that Briere talked about was the Alexei Kosov situation.
Yeah, this
where
worries me a little bit.
he has sort of said, he's staying home for a little bit and may or may not come back. And, there's only so much the Flyers can do. Of course, he's under contract to play with the Flyers and can't play anywhere else in North America, but that doesn't preclude him from, trying to play in Russia again, because we know
I
that
mean,
they
they
don't
probably
follow
won't let
those
him.
rules.
They probably won't let him, but still, what if he decides, I don't want to come back because you have a loaded goalie situation there? You didn't play me in the playoffs. Like, he has some points. He does. And
Yeah,
so,
I
the
think so.
Flyers have done the right thing in the sense that they're letting him have the space. But the fact that it's up in the air is bad. And it's up in the air.
Yeah.
Right now, they don't know.
I think so, but stay tuned on that. As far as Dev Camp goes, that's kicking off, and seeing the roster, very excited for Massimo Rizzo and getting a first look at him in addition to the 2024 NHL Draft picks that we're going to see for the first time. All of them will be there except for Ilya Potov, the Russian winger who was selected in the 6th round. And of course, Matvei Michkov won't be there either. But I think it's a good group this year. There's like a whole bunch of invitees as well. I think the other big aspect is that Carson Bjarnason is the only prospect goalie there, so he's going to have a lot of eyes on him.
Yeah, that's always tough when that happens. They'll have these other stand-ins to try and take away the strain. Yeah, the interesting thing about Rizzo. So you almost wish, and again, you re-sign Hathaway. You almost wish they didn't do that, because if Rizzo were to somehow be ready or looks good with Brink, you've now eliminated that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's one forward slot open
Right, but
on the
not two.
team, but not two.
Or two. Yeah, and it just, those guys know how to play together, and that could help Brink, because Brink is on the brink, as we've talked about. But so that part's puzzling to me.
Yeah, so that is a giant question that I have as well, but very much looking forward to seeing him in action
Yes.
again. And we'll have more on development camp as the week continues. Russ will be there. I'll be there for portions of it as well. So we will be reporting on that. Looking forward to seeing who steps up as a leader at camp. I think it should be J.R. Avon, but we'll see.
Avon could be the guy. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, because he wasn't here yesterday, we are going to get Russ's breakdown of the 2024 Flyers draft class, and we are going to do that coming up next.
I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. And we're now in full swing for summer sports like baseball. We absolutely miss hockey, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. FanDuel has odds for Major League Baseball, Wimbledon tennis, the Paris games with over-unders on medal counts by country, Euros, Copa America, and so much more. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, on tomorrow's show, we're going to talk more about development camp and the prospects, plus answering your mailbag questions. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. So, Russ, we heard from Haley about how she felt about the experience in the Sphere. What was your take on the whole event?
Yeah, I mean, the Sphere was the best place that they've ever had to draft. It was futuristic. It was like you were inside an IMAX movie. It's like you were a part of it. It was unbelievable. Players were amped up. We were amped up. We're all looking up. Like, everybody was looking up the whole time, because there's just, everything is just surrounding you and swarming. It was fantastic. So the atmosphere was great, and it was really exciting.
So looking at the Flyers draft class in general, a lot of centers, no goalie was the big observation that I had. There's a lot of size, but as Danny Breer said, they were looking for size with smarts. But what do you think?
Okay, so like at the beginning of the year, when they tell the scouts, this is what we're looking for toughness, size, hard to play against. And when the guys come back with just that, you can't act surprised and say that it's a coincidence. Sorry, Danny, we're not going for that. Look, the one that they really made a choice on was not getting G. Bouillon. And I spoke to some other experts, analysts, and TV people that do this too, and they all love Bouillon. So it's like, even if you think, Rachel, you're loaded with defensemen to the hilt, you still got to take the best guy on the board. They made a choice. Jet Luchenko's a good player, but you may have passed up a much better talent in a different position. So that's the gamble. They took a gamble there. And, I'm not saying Luchenko's not going to make it or anything. I think he will. I think he's a great kid. He's strong. He's a good playmaker. There's things to like. But you may have passed on a defenseman who's better than every defenseman you have.
Yeah, I do think that's possible, and it's a calculated risk,
Yes.
and I think this class overall is above most classes that I've dealt with, in that it is definitely a wait and see class. I
Yeah.
think that it's really hard to grade this class right away just because
Oh, you
there's a
can't do.
lot of, I mean, you can't do that in general, but I think there's been a lot easier time making an educated guess
Uh-huh.
in terms of how this class is going to turn out. Not this year. I think there's a lot of, potential here, but a lot of uncertainty on that potential.
Right. No, I think that's fair. And it was a class that was loaded with defensive talent, and it had, a fair amount of centers. It's just that the centers weren't all top liners, but they may have passed on a top line center in Hellenius. So, that's another calculated risk because, like we brought up before, when you have people saying what they're saying about him and he's going to play in the NHL the next year or two, it's okay that Luchenko's not in the NHL in the next year or two, but now people are going to be keeping an eye on Hellenius and see how he does compared to Luchenko. That's another guy.
Yeah, that's for sure. As far as the other picks, and especially like moving up to get another pick in the second round once we didn't have that Columbus pick. What do you think about that move and getting Jack Berglund and Spencer Gill with those picks?
Well, I like Jack Berglund. I covered him in the Five Nations. I had a long time to chat with Jack because he was on my flight, and so for the last 2 days while we were getting the runaround, we chatted. He's a great kid, and he's got talent, and I think that he's got a frame that he could put on some more muscle. So I think there's a lot there. I don't know if he's more than a third line talent. It's possible he could be a second line talent, but that's what I think we're going to find out. But he's not going to be a punishing 6'4" center. That he does hit. I'm not saying he doesn't, but he's not going to be that overly physical guy. He still wants to get his points. He's offensively gifted, but not crazily offensively gifted.
Yeah, I think so. I am definitely excited for him, and I do think he has a lot of
Yes,
potential. It seems like
he
he's
does.
a really good kid that's going to work really hard to get to his ceiling, and really energized about coming to the Flyers. And so I appreciate that. Spencer
Yeah,
Gill to me
just so
was,
you know, I mean, as far as with Berglund, so he's not going to
Mhm.
play in the SHL next year. He's still with Farjestad at J20. So you want to see if he progresses sometime during that year and can play
Yeah.
in the SHL. I mean, that's where you sort of can decide then, how advanced he is.
Right. And then Spencer Gill is the question mark I have. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad pick. It's just that I didn't understand moving up to get him.
Yeah, I never really had a real good look at him this year because he had a limited role in the U18s. But he's a big kid. He's a good skater. He There were people that feel like there was more that he could do, but they didn't utilize him, like meaning Team Canada. So I think there's some potential there. I don't think he's more than a 4. So I think that's probably, the spot for him. But, I can tell you, I was chatting with him. I do like him. I think
Oh, sure.
yeah, he's a good kid. He's going to work hard. He's just not like super talented, but he does the job, if that makes sense.
Right. And, describing him as a two-way defenseman that can step up offensively,
Yeah, we
you
haven't
know,
really seen it like everywhere yet, so we'll see.
yeah. Yeah. I
I
think,
mean, in his league, yes,
right. And that's the big thing is like, can what he does in the queue even translate? We don't know that at this
we don't
point.
know, and it's easy to get points in the queue, like we know that.
Yeah. So as far as the other picks, were there any of the depth picks that stood out to you?
Yeah, looking over the other picks, Noah Powell's interesting, an overager, but the way he scores, like I don't know if he's gonna be able to do that at the next level. And so, like, I think he's a boomer bust kind of pick because he's had the 2 years in the USHL, and then He'll eventually go to college. Now he's going to go to college as a 20-year-old, and it's not outrageously old or anything that happens. So we're going to have to see, because when you are like over 200 pounds in the USHL, you can muscle in some goals. And so having 43 of them, I raise an eyebrow. Makes me raise an eyebrow, and to see what he'll be able to do elsewhere. So, Austin Moline, I knew a bunch of guys from the Shattuck team this year, like Will Zellers and Aiden Park. And Moline's an interesting one because he's certainly raw. And
Right.
and so he's one where this one's going to take a while. You know what I mean? He's going to put on some more muscle. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders.
Right.
I was not surprised that he was at the draft. I think some other writers were surprised that he was there because he's a 7th rounder. But anybody who goes to Shattuck St. Mary's is going to be at the draft. That's my rule of thumb. They're always going to be there, hoping that they hear their name. So they're,
Well, it didn't hurt that he's from Vegas and was going to be there anyway.
True. But I've always found that those guys are generally there. So, if I gave you a percentage of him making it, probably like 20.
Yeah, I thought he was just a really good 7th round risk to take.
Yes.
Because
in the 7th round, it's fine.
Yeah, he's like the perfect kind of 7th round draft pick, in my opinion, with like a lot of energy, is going to work their tail off, and like has a really good background, but it's just smaller and maybe slightly less skilled right now. And you see what can happen.
Now, just to show you, though, what they left on the table, like I'll show you what was behind door number 2, is Miroslav Shatan's kid, who's a 6'7" center. Why didn't you go for that?
Well, maybe they were doing somebody a solid there, but
Maybe.
we'll see. But as far as Noah Powell goes, he is also going to be going to college, like you said, but going to Ohio State, which is a really strong program. So
it's a good program, yeah.
I feel like if there's like the issues that were there with him that allowed him to drop to the 5th round when his scoring was so high in the USHL, I think Ohio State will help him on that front.
Yeah, I think so. But again, so I fully expect him to be in Ohio State for like 3 years, then a couple of years in the AHL, and then we'll see.
Yep, I think so. But overall, I just think my big question is why no goalie? And I think that might be a problem unless they can pick 2 goalies next year, which is possible when you have.
Which they could. I mean, they have extra picks.
Yeah.
They might do that.
Yeah.
I felt like they did a decent job as far as, they had needs. The only thing they didn't do was when it came time to getting best player available, they didn't do that. And that's a choice.
Yep. They definitely had a bit of a reach pick, and we'll see if that risk paid off. In the meantime, with the schedule coming out today, there are some potential schedule changes and some new rules for next season. So we are going to look at those coming up next. All right, so there are some new rules on board for the NHL next season, and I think at least a couple of them are interesting, but they all kind of make sense. They've added a situation where a coach's challenge will be allowed, and I think that while you want to limit the coach's challenges because it drags down the game, I think this one is fair because it's about the delay of game penalties. And if it's a deflection and not actually off the player, like those
trying
calls,
to just
like,
do it to just save the his team in the defensive zone, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think to not have a bench minor for something that was clearly a deflection off the stick or the boards or something like that. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
They're changing this rule about the no line change after a dislodged net. Right now, the goalie could get away with it, but it's only called on skaters. Now the goalies won't be able to get away with it in terms of air quote
There's still
accidentally
too much of it
dislodged.
going on. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of dislodged nets, right? Way more than
right.
there need to be. How about this?
Yeah.
Nail them into the into the
Oh
ground,
my
and
god.
then the net's never going to move again.
To have that, and people got hurt real
I
bad, but
know,
of
I
course
know, I
didn't
know.
have helmets then either. So
No,
uh, that was the bigger problem, I guess, at the time. I also like following an icing. The offensive center will receive a warning, same as the defensive player for a faceoff violation. I don't know why that wasn't the case in the first place.
that's a great point. Should have been a case in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, again, there's so many things now that get very contested, and these face-off violations have become a thing too. I have seen them building, so fine.
Yeah, I think that one is good. This one, I don't know. It's just one of these things that the players are going to have to get used to about sitting on the board. So the referee will provide the offending team, the coach, and the players with a warning regarding sitting on the boards. After one warning, the team precipitating the warning will get a bench finer for future violations. So you
No,
can't just like hang out sitting on the bench
right,
or sitting on the boards.
right. I like it because you could reach for something, you could grab somebody when the ref's not looking. You know, I think it's going to cut down on the hijinks.
Yeah, I do think so. It just seems like one of those things that, like, come on, guys, do we really need to make a rule about this? Like,
I know,
you should be
right.
doing this on your own.
Right,
Is
but they're
kind of
not
the
done
point.
right, right, but they had to be the adults.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we are getting the schedule today. We have already found out the home opener is October 19th against the Canucks. We also know the Flyers will be in Calgary on October 12th if you look at their home opener. So the Flyers are starting the season on the
Well, the
road.
beat
And
writers will be happy doing that Western Canadian swing early in the year, much better than doing it in like February.
yeah, we'll see how much of it gets done then. And maybe that February time will be California. I don't know.
Right,
We'll see. We'll see. There will be a West Coast swing. It's just where it is at
right.
that time. But according to Pierre LeBrun, they're having preliminary discussions about what the NHL calendar could look like in the future. Obviously, it'll wait till the new CBA happens in a couple of years, but they're talking about moving the regular season up to early October, trying to get that cup awarded sooner than this year, which was a nightmare.
Yes.
And I think importantly, cutting the preseason to 4 games per team, which I think is a good and bad thing. It's good
Well,
because
we like it as a good thing, but the teams aren't going to like it because that's a revenue stream for them.
right. So it's a combination of the revenue stream. And I think, there's a happy medium there with making it 5 or 6 games max in terms of getting that one extra home game in for the revenue and also having a chance to see your prospects one more time.
Right. And that's a good thing to point out because that's why I actually go to some preseason games to see how these guys play against whatever NHLs are in the lineup, even if it's not the full lineup.
Right. And so I think that, there are pros and cons to it. I certainly, would like the schedule shifted up earlier to start earlier in October
Yes.
and get the season over sooner. I mean, back in the day when the cup was awarded in May, that was incredible.
Right. Yeah, because it's like, and it's not like we need a bigger off season, but players do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think given the changes in how players treat their off seasons with the workouts and strength training, there really is no off season for them. And so to
No.
at least have a chance for their bodies to heal a little bit more would be a lot better. And, especially the playoff teams whose bodies are even more broken. They have less
Yes.
and less time every year to recover for the next
Yeah,
season. And
that's true.
I think that they really need to figure out how to tighten it up. I don't think going to an 84 game season is going to help that.
No.
But if that's what they need to do to balance the schedule, I get it. And maybe that's to compensate for losing revenue for preseason games. But I don't know. I think
I
they're
think
definitely
honestly, I think what they're not saying is by putting in the 84 game schedule is they could put two new teams in the league at some point, and That
Well,
will
that
help
too.
with yeah. That's what's not being mentioned there.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. But changes could be afoot in a couple of years. Hopefully, they get something along these lines done. That will do it for today's show. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to talk more about Dev Camp. We're going to have our mailbag and a lot more as the summer gets going. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got those mailbag questions, let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russell Matt Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.